Okay, this is Andrew Orff. I'm setting up my classroom for my Instructor 1 presentation. For this presentation, I've elected to use the horseshoe or U-shaped method for the classroom setup. I have a small group of students that I'm going to be teaching today. All students will be able to see the screen here clearly, and this setup will allow for classroom and group discussion. Good morning, everyone. I want to thank you guys for coming in today. My name is Andrew Orff. I'm going to be going over a class with about ground ladders with you guys. Before we get started, just a couple housekeeping things I need to go over with you guys before we get started. Bathrooms are out the door to the right. There's a kitchenette down the hall to the left if you guys need anything later on. So for this class, what we're going to be going over is we're going to talk about the process of cleaning, inspecting, and maintaining our ground ladders, safe practices for using ground ladders, the safe and appropriate processes for carrying ground ladders, and then actually placing and throwing ground ladders, and then talking how to describing ways to secure ground ladders, and then actually raising and lowering of the ground ladders. After classes, after we get done with the lecture part, I do have a short quiz everyone will have to take. And then after that, we're going to go outside and we're actually going to do a 2 firefighter carry and raise, and then you guys are going to demonstrate how to clean, inspect, and maintain ground ladders. Any questions about the course objectives for today? Okay. So before we can get started actually getting into ground ladders, we need to make sure we know the parts of ladders. So in the fire service, everyone knows we mainly carry 2 main types of ladders. We have straight ladders, which are roof ladders, and then we have extension ladders. So just refresher of the parts of the ladders. The outside parts of the ladders are the beams. The beams in between have the rungs. Your roof ladders have our hooks on them. We have our butt spurs on the bottom of the ladders. Bottom of the ladder is the butt, top of the ladder is the tip. And then all fire department ladders have heat sensors on them. And then for our extension ladders, we obviously have a pulley. The pulley is connected to halyard, which raises and lowers the ladders. And then we have different parts of our extension ladders. The bottom part is called our bed section, and the part that extends is known as the fly section. All extension ladders have what's called paws or dogs, and that's what locks the extension ladder whenever it's raised. So what components, just a quick refresher, just discussion, what are some parts of an extension ladder that a single or a roof ladder don't have, or a single roof ladder doesn't have? Halyard, good. Dogs, good.
Bed section,
good. Perfect. Alright, and again, different types of ladders. We have our straight ladders. Our most common straight ladders that we carry on our trucks are going to be the roof ladders. We can tell they have the roof hooks on we use for hooking on the peaks of the roof. And then we have our extension ladders. We have our bed section. This is a 35 foot. So a lot of 35 foots will have 2 fly sections. So what are some times that we would think that we'd be best to use single ladders, an extension ladder, and a roof ladder? What are just some different scenarios that you guys can think of?
Manpower, height.
Yep, manpower and height.
If you're going to a roof.
Assignment, very good. And then what are the different size ladders that we carry here at St. Charles? What size ladders are carried on the engines?
16 and 24.
Very good. And then on the ladders?
35, 16, 24s, and 12 or 14.
14 and 16.
Yep.
14.
Alright, now we're just going to talk about the process of cleaning, inspecting, and maintaining our ground ladders. So obviously it's very important that we maintain our tools and equipment, always keep them in a state of readiness. Keep making sure we maintain our ladders, keeps them in good working order, make sure that they're going to function when we need them. So when we're inspecting our ground ladders, we want to make sure we cover every single part of the ladder. We want to make sure we're inspecting the rungs, the beams. On our extension ladders, we want to check the dogs and the halyard and the pulley. We want to check for excessive wear. That can be like on the different beams for wear and tear just from the fly sections going up and down, or it can be wear just from the way they're carried and positioned on the apparatus, just from bouncing around. And then we always want to make sure we inspect our ladders per our local SOPs and per the manufacturer's guidelines. When we inspect our ladders, we need to inspect our ladders after every time they come off the truck. We need to make sure we're doing a good inspection of them. After they're done, make sure there's no damage or anything that's occurred during use. If not, and then we also want to make sure we're taking our ladders out every month, at least once a month, when we're doing good truck checks, to make sure the ladders are all in good working order. All fire department ladders have a heat sensor on them. Usually it's a little sticker with an orange dot. Anytime these heat sensors are exposed to heat, they'll change color. What colors these sensors change to when they're exposed to heat?
Blue's black.
What's that?
Black.
It's black.
Black?
Very good. Yep. They change to black if they're exposed to heat. And then does anyone know about what temperature if they're exposed to, they'll change? Just kind of ballpark.
500 degrees.
It's 300 to 500 degrees that these heat sensors will change color. We want to make sure there's no heavy carbon deposits on our ladders, and then obviously if they're exposed to heat, they'll blister the paint. When we're inspecting our ladders, we want to check our rungs, check for any wear and tear, check the tightness. We want to check the welds in our rungs. The welds are going to be your weakest point on a ladder, especially on the rungs. We want to make sure there's no cracks in the welds. We want to check our bolts, make sure they're tight. Again, cracks in the welds. If we have wooden ladders, we want to make sure they're not splintered in any way. We want to make sure the wood's not warped. No deformation to the beams, and then we want to make sure we also have any vibration points that have been worn. Every heat sensor has an expiration date on it. We need to make sure we're checking those whenever we're inspecting our ladders to make sure they're within date. If they're out of date, we need to make sure we're changing those out. We don't carry wooden ladders here. That's more of a Western United States thing. But if you do have a wooden ladder, you want to make sure that the bolts on them aren't so tight that they actually crush the wood. Any ladder that's been subject to direct flame or exposed to high heat needs to be taken out of service immediately, so it can be service tested. If you find any damage on a ladder, it needs to be reported, and you need to remove the ladder from service, either so it can be repaired or so that it can be completely taken out of service, gotten rid of, and replaced. We want to make sure we're all operating our ladders as safely as possible, and by doing so, we need to make sure that they're in good working order. So we have different ladder markings. A lot of departments will mark their ladders. You'll mark the size of the ladder, usually how many feet it is. Some departments will have different marking designations for their, like your big cities, for their apparatus that it belongs to. And a lot of places also I've seen is they'll paint the balance point on their ladders, and that helps just for ease of carrying. Especially with one person carries, you can go right to that point, you know where your balance point is. You don't have to worry about wasting time trying to find it. Never paint your wood ladders. It can conceal any damage or cracks to the wood. Other labels that are going to be on your ladders are going to be your manufacturing label, and just different warning labels like for electrical hazards, your heat sensing labels, and then ideal positioning that you want to have on your ladder when extending it. When we're inspecting our metal ladders, we want to make sure there hasn't been any evidence of flame impingement or heat damage. We want to make sure that the metal isn't warped in any way. We want to make sure it's free of rust. Obviously, check our any damage to the rungs, any cracks in the welds. We'll make sure the ladders aren't bent in any way. And on our extension ladders, we want to make sure that we're checking our halyard to make sure it's still in good working order. A lot of our halyards are made out of natural fiber rope, which over time will dry out and break down. So we want to make sure we check those. If they need to be replaced, we replace them. Other types of ladders are fiberglass ladders. We want to make sure the fiberglass isn't chipping in any way. No loose components, no flame impingement. Pretty much the same things you're checking on your metal and aluminum ladders, you want to check on your fiberglass ladders as well. When we're inspecting wooden ladders, we want to check areas where any of the wood finish has been scraped away or damaged. Any dark streaks in the wood, any water damage from the wood, or anytime the wood might be warped. That's all things that we need to make sure that aren't problematic. And if we do know any of those things that are damaged, we need to make sure we're taking that ladder out of service to have it repaired, if not replaced. Obviously, anytime the wood looks like it's deteriorating, the ladder needs to be taken out of service. When we're inspecting our roof ladders, we want to make sure we check our hook assemblies on our roof ladders. We want the hooks to be able to operate easily. We want to make sure they're not too loose or too tight. Make sure that they're not loose in any way, free of rust. For our extension ladders, we will definitely want to check our pawl or our dog assemblies. We want to make sure that the dogs lock when we need them to, when they don't come free, so that the fly sections don't come down. Again, we want to check our halyard, make sure it's not worn in any way. Make sure we keep it taut in the bedded position. Make sure the pulley turns freely and that the fly sections slide easily, move freely, and they're not worn. Let's talk about what's the different ways that we're going to inspect a wooden ladder versus aluminum ladder. What are different things that we're looking for?
Splintering versus the wells being broken.
Right.
Any cracks in the wood.
Varnish removed.
Yep.
Wood.
Very good.
Darkening of the wood.
Darkening of the wood. Very good. All right. All of our ground ladders are service tested. Whenever a new ladder comes in, it'll be service tested before it gets put in service. Annually, every year we'll have a company come out and we service test our ladders. And then anytime one of our ladders is exposed to high heat or it has anything that we deem as rough treatment, that ladder needs to be taken out of service and service tested to make sure it's still safe to be used. When we're cleaning our ladders, we want to make sure we're using soft bristle brushes, water and a mild detergent, or use whatever detergent the manufacturer recommends. We want to make sure we keep our extension ladders lubricated, and as well as the hooks for our roof ladders. We'll make sure they're lubricated. That way they move freely and easily. They don't stick when we need them to work. While we're cleaning our ladders, we want to make sure we're looking for any damage to the ladders that may have occurred while it's being used, and then wipe dry after we get done washing it. So how often should ladders be cleaned?
After every use.
After every use, very good. What happens if we haven't used our ladders in over a month?
Do it monthly. Collect them.
There you go, very good. All right, we're maintaining our ladders. Like I said earlier, we want to make sure our ladders are always in a state of readiness. That way they're ready to go whenever we need them. And everyone on the department should be able to perform ladder maintenance. The difference between maintenance and repair is maintenance is something minor that we can take care of in the firehouse. Anytime there's any significant damage to a ladder, that needs to be sent off for repair. And you have to be a certified ladder technician in order to repair our ladders in the fire service. We want to make sure our ladders stay free from moisture as best as possible. That can be as easy as just the way our apparatuses are designed and where we decide to keep our ladders. Here at St. Charles, we keep our ladders stored in interior compartments, but I know other places that keep their ladders stored on ladder racks on top of the hose beds of the truck. We make sure our ladders are away from the exhaust. Undue heat that will be exposed to the ladders. Make sure our ladders are out of the elements. And the only reason we need to paint our ladders is for identification or visibility. Otherwise, we shouldn't be painting our ladders. That can hide different any damage that the ladder might have. So, what would you guys consider some general maintenance requirements for ladders? Cleaning,
Visual inspection.
visual inspection,
Lubrication.
lubrication.
Halyard replacement.
Very good. Halyard replacement. All right. Why don't we take a quick 5-minute break? When we come back, we'll get into talking about some safety things for using ladders.
Pause it.
Yeah.
Just hit stop.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
Action.
All right, guys. Now we're going to talk about safe practices of using our ground ladders. So whenever we're carrying and lifting, raising ground ladders, we want to make sure we use good lifting techniques. We need to make sure we maintain our strength, both upper and lower body. Lift with our legs. Obviously, good lifting techniques. Don't use your bag. Use your legs. We want to make sure we're choosing the correct ladder for the assigned task. So what's that mean? You get told to vent a roof on a single-story residential. Probably don't need to pull the 35-footer off the truck. You can get to the roof of a single-family, single-story residence just fine with a 24 or even possibly even with a 16-foot straight ladder. So again, just make sure we're choosing the correct ladder for the correct task. Always wear our full PPE when we're using ladders. You know, especially obviously if we're operating on a fire ground, we should have all of our PPE on. But even in training, things can still go wrong, so we need to make sure we're protecting ourselves as best as possible. Want to make sure we're using the correct number of firemen to carry the ladder. I know there's probably some people out there that can do it, but probably don't need to be trying to carry and throw and raise a 35-footer by yourself. Want to make sure that we're using adequate resources so that people aren't getting hurt. Pretty common thing, but make sure we're staying away from, keep in mind where our electrical lines are. I know especially in the historic part of our city, there's a lot of low-hanging wires. We need to make sure we're cognizant of that whenever we're throwing ladders. Want to make sure we have good footing, secure the ladder to the ground and anchor whenever we're throwing it so the ladder doesn't fall or pull away from the building. Make sure we're hanging onto the beams whenever we raise and lower the ladder. We want to have as good a control as we can of it so it doesn't fall and injure anybody or damage any property. Then when we're using our extension ladders, we need to make sure the dogs are locked over the rungs before we ascend. We need to make sure we're, as best we can, get a good stable surface for the ladder to stand on before we climb. Always use caution if you have to move a ladder sideways. I know sometimes it happens where we need to reposition it, but always make sure we're cautious whenever we have to move the ladder sideways once it's been extended. We want to climb smooth and rhythmically, good climbing techniques, and we don't want to lower our ladders. A good rule of thumb is whenever we have multiple people on an extension ladder, one person per fly section is a good rule of thumb to keep. That way the ladder isn't overloaded. If we're going to work off the ladders, we want to make sure we're locking in with leg lock. If you need to relocate a position ladder, only do it when it's ordered to do so, when it's absolutely necessary. Make sure we're using ladders for what they're designed for. I have heard of people trying to use ladders as a fulcrum, as a lever. Your ladders will get damaged. It's probably not a good practice to do. We want to make sure we use our ladders for what they're supposed to. Like we talked about earlier, make sure we're inspecting our ladders after every use, make sure there's no damage or wear, and then we need to, anytime a ladder is left unattended, we need to try to secure it in some way, either with webbing, tie it to a building with webbing. It was probably the best option in that, but we shouldn't be keeping our ladders unattended. So, any type of ladder can be considered a big lightning rod. They do conduct electricity. All ladders will conduct electricity, and they can obviously electrocute anyone that comes in contact with the ladder if the ladder contacts power lines. Also, we don't want to slide down the ladders head first. I know there are ways to do it, but that's neither here nor there. That's for another class in fireground survival. They do teach ways if you do need to bail out of a ladder going down head first, but that is a separate class. But just a good rule of thumb, don't go down ladders head first. Whenever we're lifting ladders, movements need to be smooth and controlled. Use teamwork if possible. Whenever we're carrying our extension ladders, make sure we use good lifting techniques. Bend the knees, keep the back straight, lift with your legs, lift on command. If you're using multiple people, have one person give commands on what you guys are going to do and how you're going to lift and move the ladder. Lift in unison, and then. So what would you guys say are 10 general guidelines for good ladder safety?
Proper technique.
Proper technique.
Watch out for power lines.
Watch out for power lines.
One guy per fly section.
One guy per fly section.
Secure unintended ladders.
Secure unintended ladders.
Don't go down head first.
No way on head first. So avoiding electrical hazards, we want to make sure we have good situational awareness anytime our ladders come off the truck. We want to make sure as we're carrying ladders, we're starting to check, overhead obstructions, especially power lines. Look up again right before you raise the ladder. And then we want to make sure we're staying at least 10 feet away from all energized power lines. If we don't know, I know there's a lot of multiple lines going into houses. It could be cable, internet, stuff like that. We need to make sure we treat all power lines as they're energized. So in order to stay away from power lines that may require us to use different lifting methods. Here, these firemen wanted to use a flat raise, but they have the overhead power line, so then they had to readjust and raise the ladder using a beam raise. Again, all ladders will conduct electricity, especially when wet. Positioning our fly section on our extension ladders. So I know a lot of people always ask the question, fly in or fly out? Well, here's your answer right here. If you're using an aluminum or a fiberglass ladder, our fly needs to be out away from the building. And if you have a wooden ladder, the fly goes towards the building. We want to make sure we're tying off the halyard every time we raise the ladder out of the bed. So when we tie our halyards, what kind of knot do we use? Clove hitch. Where do we need to position the clove hitch with regards to the rungs? Where out on the rungs do they need to be? In the center. Why do they need to be in the center?
So don't trip on them.
Very good. All right. So how can you avoid electrical hazards when raising a ladder?
Don't raise it to electrical hazard.
Modified raised.
Modified raise. Yep. Good situational awareness. So let's say you have we're throwing a 24-foot extension ladder. Which side does the fly need to go? Out. Good. So carrying a ladder. This is just showing, usually our aerial apparatuses have longer ladders and larger ladders than our engines do, which is obviously I talked about earlier. Our engines here carry the 16-foot roof ladder and a 24-foot extension ladder. Those ladders can usually be managed by 1 or 2 firemen. When we get into the 35-footers on our ladder trucks, you may need more people just because of the size and they're heavier. So usually, whenever we're told to deploy a ladder, we want to make sure we're using the correct ladder for the job. Usually, the incident commander or your CAT officer will tell you which ladders you need to throw, but everyone needs to size up a building whenever they get on scene. You need to anticipate the tasks that you're going to be assigned to do, and then start anticipating what tools you're going to need to get that task accomplished, and that includes which ladder you're going to need to grab. So like if you're going up to, let's say you're told you're on 9422 Kyle, you're being fired, it's a single-story residence, and you're ordered to vent the roof. What ladders are you thinking that you're going to need to grab?
Grab the 24-foot extension ladder and then a roof ladder, depending on who else is there, 16 or 12-foot.
Very good. Very good. So when we're working on upper stories, we need to make sure we have 2 means of egress. I think we do a pretty good job out here, make sure where ladders get thrown. But we need to, if at all possible, we need to make sure we need to have ladders on opposite sides of each other. So like if we throw a ladder on the Alpha side, probably need to have a ladder sent to the Charlie side as well. So this here is just a good table, good reference to just show you how many feet you'll need to get to certain parts of a building. It's like when you're going to a first story roof, you'll probably need a 16, 20, it's probably about 16, 20 feet, so you'll probably need, like Kyle said, you probably grab the 24-foot ladder that gives him enough ladder to get the roof with a little extra. Versus if you're going to like a third story, you probably don't carry a ladder long enough for that on the truck. We're gonna need to use the aerial. Length of your ladder. So one thing you need to remember is while the ladders are designated like a 24-foot ladder, that just tells you how long the ladder is. That's not its actual reach. You're gonna lose some reach because just in order whenever you set the ladder, you'll lose some reach because of when you get that for the climbing angle. So this here just shows that you could have extension ladders that might be as much as 6 inches shorter than their designated length. So positioning our ladders. If we're going to a roof to ventilate, we want to make sure we have at least 3 to 5 rungs above the roof line. That'll help us get on and off the roof a lot easier, give us good footing and good object to hang on to. If we're going to ventilate a window, the tip of our ladder needs to be at the top of the window, and which side of the window determines where the ladder needs to go.
Where the wind's blowing.
Where the wind's blowing. Where do we want our ladder to be? Upwind or downwind?
Downwind. No, sorry.
Upwind.
Upwind. Yep.
On the leeward side.
On the leeward side. Very good. And then if we're going to effect a rescue, the tip of the ladder needs to go to the base of the windowsill. One thing we need to talk about, we just been aware that a lot of our commercial buildings have parapet walls. We all know the parapet walls are like false walls on the front of buildings. They're for decoration. We just need to be aware that sometimes the parapet walls are going to be longer than what our ladders are going to be. All right. Take a quick 5-minute break. I'll let you guys look at this. All right. So this table here will just show you your designated length of ladder compared to the maximum reach it has. So like our 24 footers, you're probably only going to be able to reach 23 feet when the ladder's fully extended. 35 is going to be 34 feet. So this isn't something you need to memorize. It's just important to know that just because our ladders are designated as 24 feet, you're not going to get 24-footer reach out of them. So how would you know what size ladder to use for this different for a situation that you're assigned to?
Depends on how high you need to get.
Yep. How high you need to get. It comes from a good size up. Just size up your building, sizing up the landscape, the terrain that you're going to be on. Exactly. So when we're taking when we store our ladders, it's going to determine how we take our ladders off. And it all comes down to apparatus manufacturer and how different departments decide to store their ladders. Sometimes they can be stored on an exterior ladder rack on the side of the trucks. They can be vertical and interior compartments like what we have. They can be horizontal, or then they can also come off these mechanical ladder racks where the ladders are stored on top as well. This basically just comes down to department preference on how they want to keep their ladders stored in the best way that their guys want to be able to deploy their ladders. So whenever you're taking the ladder off the apparatus, things you need to know about the type of ladders you have, length, and their location on the truck. How they're stored. Like on the ladder rack here, you can see that you have multiple ladders stored on top of each other. There's like a little giant, and then the roof ladder on top of the extension ladder. So that'd be important to know just how they're orientated on the truck, and knowing that you're probably, if in order to get to your extension ladder, you're gonna need to remove ladders to get to the ladder that you need. Again, you want to know whether you're on your extension ladders, which way the fly's facing. So that way you know how to grab it when it comes off the truck, and then whether the which side of the ladder is facing out, whether it's the tip or the heel. A lot of departments that mount their ladders on ladder racks, they'll actually mark their ladder to where it needs to go whenever they're putting it back in the rack, just for ease of returning it to where it's stored. You need to know how your ladders are secured to the apparatus, whether it's like a Velcro strap or there's a lift bracket that you need to move, and then how they're stored inside. Whenever we're taking our ladders out that are stored inside, you want to slide them out to the appropriate carrying point or the balance point before you carry it. They'll just help with ease of carrying the ladder and just that smooth, continuous motion. When we're using multiple firefighters, we want to make sure all firemen are on the same side of the ladder if we can. So how are the ladders stored on our apparatus here?
Vertical.
Vertical, interior, or exterior?
Interior.
Very good. All right. Safety things when we're carrying ladders, we want to avoid any obstructions. Obviously, we got to maintain situational awareness at all times. Good lifting techniques, and then always look ahead and make sure we know what's ahead of us. Especially trip hazards. We want to make sure that's a big ladder we're carrying. We don't trip and fall and hurt ourselves. Just saying always use the appropriate number of personnel for the size of the ladder. So one person can easily carry and handle our straight and roof ladders. 1 to 2 people for our extension ladders, and then 2 to 3 and 4 as the ladders get larger. We want to make sure we're working and communicating as a team. There needs to be a team leader whenever we're carrying ladders. You need to have one person kind of designated the quote-unquote team leader to make the commands on when to lift, where to turn, where to position the ladder. We always want to carry our ladders with the butt end forward, and that'll also help us facilitate a smooth motion of transitioning from a carry to throwing the ladders. And then make sure our when we carry our roof ladders, that our hooks are closed. Good thing to remember is to carry whenever we're doing single person carries, have the balance point a little bit forward so that the butt of the ladder is facing towards the ground. That way, if something does happen, the butt of the ladder will go into the ground. It also increases your visibility while you're moving to look for any hazards that could be coming ahead of you. So what are some safety things we need to keep in mind when we're carrying our ground ladders?
Situational awareness.
Overhead obstructions.
Obstructions.
Appropriate personnel for the size of the ladder.
Yep.
Lifting techniques.
Yep. Good lifting techniques. Exactly. All right. So now we're going to talk about the proper procedure for placing a ground ladder. Again, we want to make sure we're checking for overhead obstructions, especially electrical wires. We want to check our ground conditions as well. Get as smooth and stable as surface as possible. We need to know the strength and integrity of the building that we're going to be placing the ladder against. Make sure it's structurally sound. As Eric mentioned, if you want to know the wind direction and speed, if you have to ventilate a window, that way you know which side of the window to place your ladder on. And make sure we have the appropriate ladder for the appropriate job. So whenever we're placing our ladders, we want to make sure that our ladder is properly placed for its intended use, and we place the ladder an appropriate distance away from the building so that we have a good climbing angle for ease of climbing. Again, for ventilating the window, we want to be upwind of the window we're going to ventilate. We want the tip of the window above the window. And then for a rescue, we want the tip of ladder below the windowsill for ease of rescue. So climbing angle. We want to have a good climbing angle for whenever we place our ladders. A good rule of thumb to get the optimal angle is the book says 75 degrees. A good way to check for that is when you place your ladder, you put your feet at the butt of the ladder, grab the rungs in front of you, and have your arms straight out. That should give you about 75 degrees. If you have too short of an angle, it's going to be much more difficult to climb. And too large of an angle, you lose some of your strength of the ladder. So again, this firefighter here is just demonstrating how to stand. His feet are at the base of the ladder. He's got his hands stretched straight out, and that's about a 75-degree angle right there. So what factors are gonna affect our ground ladder placement?
Type of building,
Type of building, landscaping.
overhead obstructions.
All right, so this is a kind of a cool conversation I wanted to have. Just think about the city of St. Charles. What are some areas that we could have problems raising with ground ladders, and why? Newtown. Why is that?
Distance between the buildings.
Okay.
Streets of St. Charles.
Okay. Why?
The offset, sometimes they have overhangs, they have outside patios with fencing.
Yep. Good, very good point. The offsets.
Alleyways,
Okay.
power lines.
Power lines. Yep. I think a lot of Station 1's areas you could have difficulties just with the amount of wires based on that construction. There's not a whole lot of underground utilities. Most electrical utilities are come into the roof level. So I think that's Station 1's area is kind of one. Newtown's a good one, just because of the proximity of the houses. All right, so ways to secure a ground ladder. We want to make sure, we're using our extension ladders again, that the dogs are locked on the fly sections before we go up. Make sure we tie the halyard, and then we always want to make sure that we have someone heeling or butting the ladder before we climb. If you're the firefighter that's designated to butt the ladder, again, make sure you have your full PPE on. You need to be alert for any falling objects, and then be alert for anyone coming up and down the ladder. We want to make sure we're not looking up. Definitely make sure we wear our helmets and have good eye protection. So you can butt a ladder from two different ways. First option is to stand in between the ladder and the building itself, grasp the beams, and actually pull the ladder towards the building. This model here, you definitely don't want to look up. Like if the firefighter is going up to break glass, the glass is going to come down on top. Could potentially come down on top of you. So to avoid injury, we want to avoid looking up at all costs. The second way is to have the firefighter stand away from the building and place his feet on the butt of the ladder. And as the person's climbing, he'll actually take his weight and press the ladder against the building. And then if need be, if you're gonna have a ladder extended for an extended period of time, you can actually fasten the tip of the ladder to a building with something like webbing or a rope. So how would you guys, if you were gonna secure a ground ladder, or how would you do it?
Like looking towards the building.
You look towards the building?
Building, yeah. Or button the ladder.
Okay.
Secure the tip to something that.
Yep. Alright, now raising and lowering a ladder. You need to make sure you know the ladder type, the number of personnel available whenever you're going to raise a ladder, then the different weather, and obviously the ground, the topography of the ground that you're going to have, the surface that you're going to be raising the ladder on. When we're raising our ladders, transitioning from a carry to a raise, it's not necessary to put the ladder in the ground. It's easiest just to go in one smooth motion and transition from a carry to a raise. but it needs to be firmly on the ground when the ladder's raised, and then transition to smooth continuous motion. So this is a single firefighter raise. This is a pretty common raise. What we do here in St. Charles, we'll use a high shoulder carry and then transition into a beam raise. If you need extra support, you can actually use the base of the building as support to help raise the ladder. And then if you have multiple firefighters, you can use something like a flat raise, where the butt of the ladder is on the ground. One firefighter supports both of the butts of the ladder, and the other firefighter walks up the ladder using the beams and placing it against the building. Or you can use the beam raise, where you have the ladder on its side, use have one side of the beam and raise it up. Once the ladder's raised, you're gonna need to pivot it, so that way before you can put it against the building. Usually you need at least 3 firefighters to raise a 35-foot ladder. A 4 firefighter raise is something that we really don't use here with our department, but it can be needed if you have a heavier ladder. If you have a heavier ladder, you could need more personnel to help raise that ladder. So what are the 2 methods that we can use to raise our ground ladders with 1 or 2 fire?
Beam raise.
Beam raise?
Flat.
Flat. Alright, if you need a pivoted ladder, it's not always recommended, but it could be necessary if you have your fly correctly positioned. Like if you have a metal ladder that flies towards the building and you need it to be out, you can pivot the ladder, or if you flat raise a ladder against the building. If possible, pivot the ladder before extending it, and you want to pivot on the beams closest to the structure. Limit movement if you need to shift the ladder. So that's where you have the ladder raised and extend, you need to shift it left or right. Try to limit that to short distances. It's very dangerous to be moving ladders once they're fully extended. You don't have as good a control of the ladder, and it's more likely it can fall and hurt someone or damage property. So if you have a ladder that's about 20 feet or shorter, 1 firefighter should be able to do that. Just pick up the ladder and slide it over. Extension ladders will require 2 firefighters to where, and one method you can do that is to slide the top of the ladder sideways a little bit and then bring the bottom of the ladder over and then just kind of walk it to where you need it positioned. So how can a ground ladder be moved once it's already in place? Pivot, yep. Shift. Alright. Are there any questions about what we've gone over today? Alright. We'll take a quick break. When we come back, we'll pass out the written test. And then when we're done, we'll go outside and we'll knock out the practical portion real quick if everyone's good with that.
Yes, sir.
Alright, take a 10-question quiz real quick. Everyone, I'll take it, pass it around, take one, put your name on it, and then hand it back into me when you guys are done. There you go. And then after you guys take this test here, then we'll go back out, we'll go outside, we'll do the skills portion real quick, okay?
Follow directions, Ricky.
Project 322 also respond for vehicles in the building, Timber Creek Grill, 1120 Technology Drive, respond, yes. Project 322 also respond for vehicles in the building, Timber Creek Grill, 1120 Technology Drive.
First one?
What's the first?
First one got you tripped up. You didn't talk about it.
team reporting calls, responding to reports. Units responding to Timber Creek Grill, 1121 Drive.
You guys been in your test and take a break.
You can grade on it.
Tim, is that your cup?
My cup, yeah.
Thank you. Alright. Hey guys. Yeah. Alright, so for this skill that we drew, we're gonna do a 2-person carry and raise of a 24-foot ladder. So as the instructions say, working as a team, wearing all personal protective equipment. 2 students shall demonstrate communication to each other, the proper lifting and carrying methods to get the ladder to the desired location, and then raises and lowers the ladder from either the beam method or the flat raise. Then after you guys do that, you'll take the ladder down, and then you guys will demonstrate how to clean, inspect, and maintain the 24-foot extension ladder. Do you guys have any questions? Nope. Okay.
Well, I'm just gonna pick it up and walk in a circle. Throw it or, yeah. Ready? Which side do you wanna spin and put it on your shoulder? What's that? As we pick it up and spin and put it on your shoulder. All right, ready? 1, 2, 3. Ladder this window, check for overhead obstructions. Do the flat raise. Ready? Good. Plan inspection.
Yes.
Start with inspection. After use, the housing is still in good working order. Pulley moves freely. There's no visible debris or charring or soot. These are all tight. Welds broken. It's tight, rivets are in place, nothing's loose. Dogs move freely. No excessive debris anywhere. We clean it with a mild detergent or recommended, so, or the soft person. Perfect.
Good.
Want us to leave it right here and do it? Let the shoulder carry it on. scrub brush with some